Rochester Today with Andy Brownell and Tom Ostrom on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good morning. It's Thursday. I'm Andy Brownell with Tom Ostrom. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Andy.
Well, what do you have in the mailbag today?
Mailbag here. Okay, here we go. The Babylon Bee. FBI Director Wray resigned before Trump could fire him. We have more on that later. The FBI incident, the Babylon Bee is on top of, and they say Trump is worried everyone will quit before he can tell them you're fired. Reports circulated that President-elect Trump is worried corrupt government officials will quit before he has the opportunity to fire them. He's looking forward to doing it. You're fired, career bureaucrats.
Oh, that's right, the show.
Yeah. So if he's worried they're going to quit before he gets a chance to drain the swamp.
The Apprentice was the TV show where he always canned somebody at the end of the program. Right.
Also the Bee, satirical. Officials within the FBI have warned that Trump's naming Kash Patel, director of the Bureau, could undermine the agency's work on not releasing the Epstein client list. The FBI has that, and they aren't releasing it. The FBI's poured massive amounts of resources into not releasing this, and other things too. And the sex trafficking stuff and everything else, and the FBI officials are worried that Patel's nomination could hamper ongoing efforts to jail grandmothers who pray outside of abortion clinics. That Trump might interfere with that too. Then Branko's on top of a Minnesota issue. Shows the Republican elephant with a box labeled ballots, 14-vote margin, Scott County, District 54A, Minnesota House election issue. And the elephant says, hey, 20 ballots are missing. And then the Democrat donkey is chewing on the ballots, saying, What ballots? Munch, munch, munch. Remember that issue?
Well, that's going to be a big issue after the first of the year, because I don't think the legal case will be resolved by then, and the State House of Representatives will have to make a decision on how to proceed, and it could turn into a ugly partisan mess.
Yeah. And the Babylon Bee, it's official. Trump has the hottest looking cabinet of all time.
Oh, gosh.
And less than a month after the presidential election, 8 weeks away from inauguration, experts have confirmed it's the hottest cabinet. He's assembled his roster of officials, bright, attractive women. He said, well, that's just how we pick them. They're photogenic and they're smart. And, people like Kristi Noem and Nick, other people too, Tulsi Gabbard, and this whole list of things that are photographed here. Seems to be that. And then finally, mailbag from Wayne. He's got a little humor here. Tom, they found out that McDonald's worker who identified the killer of the healthcare CEO was Kamala Harris.
Oh, God.
McDonald's worker, that's the mailbag.
I get the joke. I got it. Okay, we'll take a break, come back in a moment. More Rochester Today, Thursday edition with Tom Ostrom. I'm Andy Brownell on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.
Rochester Today with Andy Brownell and Tom Ostrom on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
News Talk 1340 KROC AM 96.9 FM. Thursday morning with Rochester Today. Tom Ostrom. I'm Andy Brownell. And I guess we start out, as always, with things closer to home. Minnesota and Rochester area news, Tom?
Yeah. I may have covered this before, or it might be a repeat article in my file, and I don't have a date on it. It seems to me we mentioned it, though. Rochester police are investigating home break-ins that targeted Asian members of the community. Between November 13 and December 3, the department received burglary reports, and the victims were all Asian Americans. They returned home to find their houses ransacked, valuables taken, involved forced entry through windows, and they occurred within 24 hours of each other, and gives the location of the neighborhoods here that I won't mention. And police say detectives are reviewing the evidence of 5 different cases, and you just wonder if that's jealousy or racism or whatever.
Or professionals. And your sense of deja vu was warranted. This isn't the first time this has happened in this community. I don't know if it was the year before or 2 years ago. We had a similar series of break-ins that targeted Asian business owners. And my gut feeling is you've got some pros at work here. The previous round, and I don't know this time around if it's the same, but I can only speak to what I know about the previous incidences. They involved business owners, family-owned businesses, and investigators would tell you that the folks who were targeted worked long hours at their businesses. Family members worked with them at the businesses, so their homes would sit empty for long stretches of time during the day, and they must have been, staked out, whatever, had knowledge that they kept significant valuables in their homes. Sad news for these folks. And up in the Twin Cities, they're warning of, once again, gangs of professional thieves. These aren't locals either, Tom. These are people from other parts of the world, other parts of the country, targeting wealthy people in the Twin Cities, including professional athletes. And while they're away on the road competing, they're staking out their homes and going in and breaking in and stealing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of merchandise. And it's not happening just in the Twin Cities or Minnesota. It's happening in other parts of the country as well.
Wow.
And I wish the authorities luck in tracking these scoundrels down.
Yeah. Minnesota Department of Human Resources has not tried to recover more than $40 million in overpayments. The report says the agency has made an attempt to recoup some of the debt in 2019. It sent one notice to a provider. A report from the Jody Harpstead is the Department of Human Services Commissioner, and a report from the Office of the Legislative Auditor found that the Minnesota Department of Human Services has not tried to recover over $40 million in overpayments it made to healthcare providers. The DHS is responsible for administering healthcare programs, medical assistance, Medicaid, and it requires healthcare providers to submit claims to the DHS for reimbursement, and then those claims sometime are adjusted for rate changes or record keeping or overlooking things. And the DHS has not attempted to recover over $40 million in outstanding over repayments. And the reasons for that are bookkeeping issues or rate changes that were overlooked or not acted upon, and the outstanding recoverable funds. And so some Republicans in the legislature are concerned about that. Attorney General Ellison isn't acting on it. And Jody Harpstead has been called before the legislature, and they just say, we don't have the resources or the accounting methods that track these changes, and we're just trying to be efficient about who we try to get the claims from and who we don't. But lawmakers are saying their system is antiquated and the oversight and laxity has to be corrected.
It kind of reminds me of the Pentagon. Minnesota's own version of the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And Harpstead was brought in to straighten out that department, which I admit would be a daunting task. It's one of the most embedded bureaucracies you can imagine. The human services budget is immense for the state of Minnesota in comparison to other budgets. Other states, obviously, have much larger outlays of cash coming out of their human services department based upon population. But I do sympathize with the difficulties involved in managing the influx of federal funds for these programs and the audit procedure of it. But it's not chump change we're talking about here. This is what you're describing is $40 million worth of lax accounting. Mm-hmm. This is on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars in documented fraud involving state agencies. And we're facing a potential $5 billion shortfall in a few short years. And I know the Republicans are going to make hay off of this during the next legislative session because we're going to be in a gridlock, and they'll be able to call hearings and bring people forth to highlight what is essentially waste, and in some cases mismanagement within the state government that is a sizable amount of money. And always the excuse is, well, if you all look at how much it would cost to crack down on this and track down all the money, we'd probably spend just as much doing it as we would collect, so therefore we're just going to put it in the trash heap and let it go. And the irony of that is it encourages those who would take advantage of the lax accounting to be a little loosey-goosey with the way that they apply for reimbursement. Mm-hmm. And furthers the waste.
Yeah. Minneapolis Mayor Frey vetoed a council resolution. The council resolution supported pro-Palestinian protesters at the University of Minnesota, and they did some damage to campus buildings. And the council wanted to forgive them for it and revoke the punishment that was meted out to a couple of the participants. And so the Minnesota Council wanted this to be forgiven as unfair. It was just public protest that should be protected. And Mayor Frey vetoed that. He sided with the university that something had to be done, that these demonstrations destroyed property and threatened people. Frey seems to be quite a moderate dealing with that council. He's clashed with them before.
And I would say not moderate in the traditional sense, but in comparison to a very liberal city council, he appears to be moderate, and a little bit of surprise that he seems to be acting reasonably in the face of some unreasonable actions by the city council, or it'd be like herding cats up there. I can't even imagine that. I've said it before. If you want to look at examples of a dysfunctional municipal government in the United States of America, just look at Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And the structure of the government invites dysfunction. And I don't understand how the citizens of that city put up with it. And I think there is growing frustration among the people living in that city over what is happening because of this dysfunction. It makes it very difficult to have any sort of leadership. It makes it very easy to point fingers and shift blame when things go wrong. Very difficult to hold anybody accountable because of the way the decision-making apparatus is set up in the city of Minneapolis. I don't know. I think if you were to put forward some sensible, conservative leadership who could appeal across cultural divides, they might have some success in Minneapolis long term, because I think there's growing frustration with the way that city government is headed.
Mm-hmm. I think isn't Attorney General Ellison's son on the council too? But
yeah,
and then, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think he's going to run again.
Yeah, I can't remember. They just had as the city of Rochester grapples with a homelessness issue, which seems it's a difficult issue. You have people suffering for a variety of reasons. You have the criminal element mixed in, which kind of creates some resistance to a generosity towards our fellow neighbors struggling through difficult times. But in the city of Minneapolis, I mean, it's never handled perfectly because it's such a horrible problem, but it seems to be not anywhere near as bad as it is in many other communities. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's bad, but in Minneapolis, it's out of control. They had a fire at an encampment yesterday in Minneapolis, and these fires in these encampments are becoming more and more common. They have propane tanks exploding because people are bringing these portable heaters to heat tents, and thank goodness nobody was hurt, but it spread, and a home that was near the encampment was destroyed by the fire. It could have spread through the whole neighborhood with the winds the way they were blowing yesterday. Yeah. As I say, growing frustration.
Yeah. Jim Schultz is the president of the Minnesota Business Council. He wrote an article that was in the Duluth News Tribune, and Alpha News picked it up. And he served in the first Trump administration, and he had an article recently, The Liberal War on Minnesota Agriculture, and he went into great detail. Like, for example, California has rules when Minnesota agriculture exports or sells agricultural products to California, but California has strict rules and insists that and farmers in Minnesota comply with breeding and egg laying and calf raising rules that California wants us to adhere to. And Minnesota farmers have lots of costs, and these are making it difficult for their sales in other states. And then Schultz lists also Minnesota lawmakers who are urban but not knowledgeable about farming, with environmental concerns, taking land from farmers, and that the recent increase in food costs and inflation, all these things are harming Minnesota agriculture profits that have declined because of these factors, declined by 20% their profit margins over the last few years because of inflation and these rules. And Schultz said farmers are being discriminated against by lawmakers who don't understand agriculture, and farmers are the best stewards of the land. They don't need some of these restrictions. They're very conscious about the land that have to support their families and that feed the public. And we have to support farmers and stop some of these intrusions on their enterprise.
I'm always amazed, Tom, the amount of disdain many people living in urban centers have for the people who feed them. If they would actually look at the overall picture, you think that they would have a lot more respect for the people who take on the job and the challenges of growing the food that keep us alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And farmers are very bright. They're very intelligent. Not only do they have hard work to do, and they've got the cost of doing it and the machinery and everything, and they have to know technology. They have to know the weather patterns.
The markets.
They have to know economics. They have to be very capable on many, many fronts. And you're right. A lot of people that live in urban areas have no appreciation of those things.
We have to take a break for news already, Tom. We'll do that. Come right back. More Rochester Today with T.O. I'm Andy Brownell. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM at 96
FM.
Good morning. Welcome back. Rochester Today, Thursday with Tom Ostrom. I'm Andy Brownell. And on to national news topics.
Okay. FBI Director Christopher Wray, as we mentioned in the mailbag, makes it official, and he announces that he's resigning ahead of Trump's taking office, where he would certainly be fired. And Trump, of course, has soured on Wray over the years, the wokeism, the FBI going after, it seems, patriotic people and parents and people who demonstrate outside of abortion clinics and all of this. And Trump said he's not concerned about terrorists or criminals pouring into our country. And when a bullet hit my ear, he even said in testimony maybe it was shrapnel. Well, what has that got to do with anything? And where did the shrapnel come from?
Right.
So Wray, who was appointed by Trump, has been a disappointment certainly to conservatives. And Senator, go ahead.
I kind of thought he would give up more of a fight. I was a little surprised at his announcement that he was going to resign because of prior indications were that he and his allies were going to resist efforts to push him out. And I understand that he serves at the whim of the President of the United States, but traditionally, FBI directors have been allowed to serve out their terms, and I think his was for another year or more. Usually, no, it's 10 years, so 2 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but...
the FBI just isn't releasing information like the men that tried to assassinate Trump, 2 of them. There isn't information out. The man that killed the health insurance CEO, boy, all kinds of information on him, but we still don't know much about the 2 men that tried to assassinate Trump. And then these unidentified flying objects over New England. Nobody seems to know anything about that either, or release information or have any analysis of what they are and what's going on.
Or at least they don't have information they're willing to make public yet, because it could very well be a foreign power that is exercising some sort of intelligence operation or testing our own defenses. But I'm flabbergasted by this drone thing. I mean, these aren't these little tiny drones that people have for hobbyists to take photographs with. These things are the size of small vehicles.
Yeah.
Which require significant power sources and sophisticated navigation technology.
Sure.
And there are videos of one that apparently has crash landed and burst into flames. So you think that whoever's investigating would have been able to glean quite a bit of knowledge from the wreckage of this thing. So that leads me to believe they're just not telling us what they know.
Yeah, and it was like, well, look at the carelessness and denials of the China balloon that started in the West Coast and went across the nation. That was ignored or covered up until civilians made it clear what was going on. But Senator Rand Paul, Republican Kentucky, going back to Wray, he said Wray has been incredibly dismissive of civil liberties of normal American citizens, and the FBI and career FBI agents have been whistleblowers on these things too. That was another thing that gets Wray in trouble. And then the FBI's tried to crush those whistleblowers. But Paul said that he's been dismissive of normal patriotic Americans and negligent in some other areas. And like parents went before school boards were harassed, women that have gone demonstrated or prayed in front of abortion clinics have been even arrested. And Senator Grassley has told the FBI and Ray, preserve your records because we're going to pursue some things that have gone on. I don't know how effective that will be if Ray is subpoenaed after he's resigned. Will he simply say he can't divulge or he's not aware of or plead the Fifth Amendment? But anyway, Rand Paul isn't pleased with Ray either.
I think Ray sealed his fate when he signed off on the SWAT team operation at Mar-a-Lago. A very public and embarrassing moment for the man who is now going to be president of the United States. I don't think you survived that decision. There were people within the FBI who said, this is not the way to handle this. And those at the top we're going to go do it this way. And it was strange, to say the very least.
You bet.
One thing, we're still talking about the Biden administration, because Ray, member of the Biden administration, he kept him on. The president today announcing the commuting of the sentences of 1,500 convicted individuals across the United States. As we go on the air this morning, I don't know any details about what offenses. I mean, it's a lot of people, 1,500. In fact, it's the most in modern times. I remember there was an outrage when President Obama commuted or paroled 300 people during the final month of his presidency. And there's indications that Biden may kick out even more commuting sentences or pardons, including the possibility of people who are currently on death row being paroled. And there's still the talk of these preemptive pardons coming forward, that whether that'll happen or not. I don't know how this is going to help what is left of his legacy.
Yeah, you wonder. Representative Nancy Mace, Republican, South Carolina, was attacked at the U.S. Capitol by an alleged trans LGBTQ activist who laid hands on her and hurt her, caused physical discomfort to her. And the suspect has been located and he's been named and he's been arrested.
He's been charged, actually.
And Representative Mace said, I was accosted in the Capitol. My wrist was injured and I'll heal just fine. The Capitol Police arrested him. She's a lightning rod because she introduced a bill aiming to have members of the U.S. Congress use bathrooms corresponding to their biological sex. And this person was angry about that. And she's been harassed at her office by people on that issue.
This is one of those that you're getting completely divergent versions of the events. And so it's really difficult to navigate through what actually happened based upon whatever person's perspective was of the event. The person you're talking about has been charged. A criminal charge has been filed against the person, and he has been released with conditions, mainly stay away from the Congresswoman. She claims that he, I guess, aggressively pumped her arms, grabbed both of her arms, by the hand in what, I guess would be a pretend handshake, and shook her arms vigorously, causing pain to her wrists and shoulders. Other eyewitnesses are saying, no, it was a normal handshake. And the guy basically put forward a position concerning transgender youth and his support for them. And so we'll see how that plays out, whether the charges will actually hold up or not.
That's right. An FBI whistleblower, Ray tried to stop the whistleblowers from revealing information about what they considered FBI erroneous policies. An FBI whistleblower is now saying that the FBI is intentionally blocking security clearances for Trump officials, slowing down the process. And Trump tends to go around them and appoint people without the FBI approving their security status. He has the power to do that.
He certainly does, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to just quickly mention on his cabinet appointments, I thought Hegseth probably was done. I thought he was damaged goods, but he apparently is staging a revival for his chances to make the cabinet and winning over members of the Senate during individual meetings with these people. So who knows? He might survive the gauntlet. It'll be a messy one. His confirmation hearings are sure to be ugly, but I was giving him far less than a 50-50 shot even a week ago, and now who knows?
And Veterans Group approve of him because he did have a good combat record and is knowledgeable. And people say these sexual accusations are exaggerated. And
the
then
thing interesting. Oh, sorry. One thing I found interesting about him and others, including Tulsi Gabbard and Vance, for that matter. These are people who served in the war on terrorism in the Middle East.
Sure. And
have very, at least according to their public statements, jaded views of U.S. intervention overseas. Mm-hmm. And that viewpoint has proven to be very popular among U.S. military veterans who served in combat roles in that part of the world, right, as far as their views on regime change or, what was the other one? Nation building, I think is the term the neocons used back in the 90s and the 2000s.
Yes.
So that alone says something about Trump's views on foreign policy, that he's named these people who are gaining a voice as that age group and demographic moves into the age where they hold political power.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting.
Right. And then Trump has picked his personal lawyer, Alina Habba, to be his counselor to the president. She, again, very photogenic, very bright, very successful. She has defended him on these many suits against him by prosecutors and attorneys general. And she's been very successful in very high profile cases, defending him very ably. And Trump said she's an advocate for justice, a defender of the rule of law, and she's an invaluable advisor to me and to our transition. He wanted to appoint her as press secretary, but she said, no, that's not my forte. I want this job and continue to protect our president, and she's been unwavering in her loyalty to him and some very tough court cases that she has very ably handled, and Trump admires her like he does the other people he's appointing.
There's a bit of irony that his proposed cabinet members and high-level appointments in his administration are proving to be extraordinarily diverse.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to gender diversity. He's chosen a lot of women for very high-profile positions within this administration that, in comparison to the Biden administration, I would argue shows quite a bit more diversity in both gender and also, in some cases, cultural backgrounds.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you can't bring up economic diversity because if you look at even the Biden administration, those positions were largely filled with people who were very wealthy as well. That's
right. Do we have time for another one?
A quick one, sure.
Trump is suggesting he might pardon most January 6th people that have been imprisoned, and he might investigate Liz Cheney because he's accused her on a news show of destroying evidence, the January 6th evidence that was in fact exonerating Trump. And he said, we're going to probably investigate her. well, Liz Cheney just thinks she's above the law. She thought Trump wasn't, but she thinks she is. And she heard about this, and she said, if he threatens to investigate me, there will be sanctions. That's sanctionable conduct. She doesn't define it, but she said she will retaliate. But she's evidently being targeted by Trump.
All right. Stay tuned, in other words. Okay. We'll take a quick break. Back with some international news when we return on Rochester Today with Tom Ostrom. I'm Andy Brownell, and this is News Talk 1340 KROC AM at 96.
Rochester Today with Andy Brownell and Tom Ostrom on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back. Rochester Today. We have a few minutes left in the program. So, Tom, what do we have in foreign affairs news?
The Ukraine former military commander-in-chief said the direct involvement of Russian allies in Ukraine means the World War III has officially begun. He's concerned about it, and he wants Ukrainian victory. In that sense, the former military chief, Valery Zaluzhnyi, warned that we are in World War III. He was replaced by President Zelensky, and he's now the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States. So he's in Washington, D.C. But he said you got Iranian weapons, Chinese support, North Korean soldiers, and we have to win the war, but it's increasingly difficult, and with Russia using new kinds of ballistic missiles and gaining territory, and so
the risks are huge.
Yeah, and he said World War III has begun, and the President Zelensky is really angry at the Biden administration. Biden has sent more equipment and more funding, but the administration of Biden said that Zelensky has to lower the draft age to teenagers if he's going to win the war. And Zelensky is furious about that suggestion and said that will not be done. And he was resenting very much the U.S. suggesting that policy.
What? Oh, wait, back up. The United States suggested he'll have to lower the draft age to the teenage years?
Yeah.
Okay, that's terrible. I don't even comprehend that. I mean, the risks
right
of this...
now it's 25 years old and above that are, and the Biden administration thinks it has to be lowered to less than 25, and Zelensky took offense to that.
Okay. Well, I when you say we're on the road to World War III, I can't discount the possibility. It is scary because the direct connections that former military commander outlined, without even mentioning the connections to what's happening in the Middle East now, with the collapse of power structures, the weakening of Iran and the Russians' positions in the Middle East, and when people or leaders become desperate, their actions become more and more unpredictable, and communications between the two sides, I guess the level of distrust rises on both sides because it becomes very difficult to discern what anybody really means when they're saying what they're doing. Was Russia, when they fired that ICBM, what kind of signal was it trying to send? Was it sending the signal that we all fear, that tactical nukes might be introduced into the conflict, or was it just another bit of bluster by Putin? Those are extraordinarily dangerous recipes.
Right. And the Biden administration wants Zelensky to lower the conscription or draft age from 25 to 18. That's why I mentioned
18. Teenage. Well, still. It's an escalation. It would be extraordinarily unpopular for Zelensky to do that move when already a majority of his population has expressed a great deal of weariness with this ongoing war and wishes for negotiations with the Russians.
Right.
But
Israel has struck at Syria. Remember, the Assad regime has been overthrown, but Israel has a border with Syria, and its military strikes are initiated now in Syria, and the Israeli Defense Force says we have to eliminate its air force. We don't know who's taking over there or what they're going to do, but we're going to eliminate the air force on our boundary.
And the chemical weapons abilities of that were put together by Assad and his father. We have to run. We have to save whatever we have left until next Tuesday, Tom.
Okay.
Man, the hour goes by fast. Okay. You have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week with more Rochester Today. Steve Lang in tomorrow with Rochester Magazine on News Talk 1340, KROC AM at 96.